Hello, welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I've got my Q4 reading wrap up for you. So in the last 3 months of the year I finished 46 books, which was a total of 15,143 pages, and that averaged at 182 pages per day, and I counted those days as 31 days in October, 30 days of November, but just 22 days in December, because that's when I kind of stopped reading and adding that to my reading list for 2023. And then anything I read in the last week of December I'll push into my January reads, and I'll wrap those up for my January reading wrap up at the end of next month. So in terms of how I read the books, I read 4 ARCs, 5 audiobooks, 6 ebooks and 31 books on Kindle Unlimited. I had 1 2-star read, 9 3-star reads, 28 4-star reads and 8 5-star reads, and I'm going to go through all 8 of those with you today. A couple of them were rereads though from earlier in the year, but I'll let you know which ones those were when I get to them. Then in terms of the genres or the subgenres of romance, I had 2 alien romances, 1 BDSM romance, 2 Christmas romances, 8 dark romances, 1 fantasy romance, 15 mafia romances, 1 MC, 5 monster romances, 1 Omegaverse, 4 paranormal, 1 sci-fi and 3 small town romances, and then finally 2 sports romances as well. So a fairly wide spread of different types of books that I read, but a third of everything that I read was a mafia romance, and quite heavily dark and mafia romance as well. So basically about a third tend to be mafia romances and half I would say are dark romances. Okay, so let's jump straight in then to the first book on my list for the quarter, and that is Heartless by Elsie Silvera. And this was a reread for me because I did read it originally at the start of the year. It was a 5-star read then, it's a 5-star read now, and in this particular occasion I reread it as the audiobook. Now this is book 2 in the Chestnut Springs series. I'm sure you have heard about it. There are a lot of booktubers and bookstagrammers who have absolutely loved this one, and Elsie Silvera is obviously quite popular now. This is a small town cowboy romance, and in this one we're following Cade, who is a single father, and then Willa, who basically comes to work for him as his nanny to his little boy Luke. Now Cade is one of the Eatons. He is the brother from the hero from book 1, and Willa is the heroine from book 1's best friend. And basically Cade is looking for someone to look after his son during the summer holidays. He can't find anyone suitable. He doesn't want a young attractive girl living in his house, because a lot of the girls in town that have kind of applied for this role also kind of want to start a relationship with Cade, and he absolutely is not looking for that at all. He just wants someone trustworthy, reliable to spend the summer with his son Luke. Now he's pretty much exhausted all of his options. He's exhausted every option in town, and Summer, who is the heroine from book 1, she suggests her best friend Willa, because Willa works for her brother in a kind of a bar. But this bar is being refurbished for the summer, so she's currently not working, and she said, hey, come and stay with us in Chestnut Springs and you can be Luke's nanny. Now she's got no nanny experience whatsoever, but as soon as she meets Luke, her and Luke have absolutely this rapport, and she's absolutely fantastic with kids, and Luke really loves her. And Cade is very, very grumpy. This is also sort of a grumpy sunshine romance as well. He's very grumpy. He really doesn't want Willa to be the nanny, but he's out of all options and he reluctantly agrees. And this is also a live-in arrangement, so basically Willa stays in the house with him because obviously he has early mornings. He's a cowboy, he looks after the ranch, so he has early mornings and you know, often late nights if there's an emergency, and so Willa needs to be there at all times. So this then becomes kind of a very close proximity romance. Cade and Willa have amazing chemistry together, and obviously over time as she's living in his house they get much closer together and the relationship goes from there. So if you haven't read this one yet, I highly recommend it. Then another reread, a book that I've talked about ad nauseum all year long, and that is Ruthless Creatures by JT Geissinger. This was you know, a second or third reread for me, because I wanted a comfort read earlier this month, and I ended up listening to the audiobook for this one. This one is book 1 in the Queens and Monsters series. It's a mafia series, and in this one we're following Cage, who is a Russian mafia hero. In fact, he is kind of like the second in command of the Russians, and kind of acting in charge, because currently his boss basically is currently in prison. And the heroine in this one is Natalie, and Natalie basically had a fiance who disappeared. He's been missing 5 years, and he disappeared the day before they were due to get married, and she has been in a very long period of mourning. She can't get over him and really struggles to move on with her life. But 5 years later, she now has to acknowledge the fact that he is most likely dead and not coming back. And she kind of goes out to celebrate the 5th anniversary of his disappearance with her best friend Sloane, and that's when she bumps into Cage, this mysterious man in a bar. He oozes sexuality, he oozes danger, and everyone's very intrigued by who he is. And it turns out that he is in fact now her new next door neighbour, because he's bought the house next door, and they kind of start a relationship from there. But it's not too long before she figures out that something isn't quite right. He knows something about the disappearance of her fiance, and from there we kind of uncover more secrets. I really like this one because there's a bit of a mystery to this one as well, where she's trying to figure out exactly what's going on. But I absolutely love Cage. He is probably one of my favourite Russian mafia heroes of all time. So the next book that was a 5-star read for me was The Initiation by Nikki Sloan, and this is part 1 of a 3-part kind of romance between Maris and Royce, but it's also book 1 of a 5-part series for the Filthy Rich Americans. Now the first 3 books in this series, like I say, all focus on Maris and Royce, and they are all fairly short. They're around the 200-page mark, so they are fairly quick to read and to get through. Now this series has been around a long time, and I've been very intrigued to read it, and finally kind of got around to doing it. It's a dark billionaire romance. It's also sort of an arranged marriage, and it's also like quite psychological. I wouldn't exactly call it a psychological thriller, but it's psychological in nature, where there is a lot of mind games that are played between these characters. You don't really know who's telling them the truth. You don't really know what motivations people have or what they're trying to achieve, and so it kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat in terms of what's going on. Also, some of the things that actually happen in here are quite what I would describe as pearl clutching moments. Some things that one of the main characters, Maris, has to do is quite scandalous, and so lots of, like I say, sort of like mind games and tricks going on between these people. But essentially it's all revolves around this family who are extremely wealthy and own like a large sort of bank, like an investment firm. So they are basically billionaires, and the head of this family is McAllister, and he is very much a narcissist, wants everything in his own way, absolutely has his own agenda, and he's very manipulative, and he's manipulating everyone basically in his life. Now his son is Royce, and he starts out where he is desperately trying to get a seat on the board of his father's company. He works for his company, but he wants to sit on the board, and ultimately he wants to take over this company. And so there is quite a like power struggle between the son and the father, but of course the father always maintains sort of the upper hand. And Royce, in order to get onto the board, Royce needs a wife. Now he's sort of arranged in marriage. It's a long kind of standing arrangement where he's going to marry the daughter of a close family, and it's actually Maris's sister that he is supposed to marry. Now he doesn't want to marry this sister, and she doesn't want to marry him, and so they really kind of struggle against this to start with. But the sister then falls pregnant by another man, and because she's now pregnant by another man, he can no longer marry her, and instead he is now required to marry Maris. Now secretly, Royce has wanted this outcome for a while, because it is Maris that he's had his eye on for a while. And Maris and Royce have known each other for a long time. Now Maris really doesn't want to marry Royce. She doesn't even really like him that much, but she is attracted to him. And her family are actually struggling for money. Like, outwardly it appears like they have everything, they live in a big house and everything, but her parents have been living well beyond their means and they are very much in debt. So she is very much forced to marry Royce. Again, this is very manipulative on McAllister's part, because he sort of says, marry my son, have it all go through, and I'll make sure that your family are taken care of. But one wrong step and I'll take everything away and your family will be left with nothing. So Maris is pretty much blackmailed into this marriage. And when she then has to marry Roy, she has to be approved by the board and then put through an initiation. Now I won't tell you what happens in the initiation exactly, but it is quite difficult for both Royce and Maris, and really kind of sets the tone for what happens in the next sort of the rest of the book and the next two parts. And Royce very much likes Maris, but he pulls her to one side early on in their relationship and says that you can't trust me. I absolutely want to take over the company from my father. Anything that I say to you in private is true and I absolutely mean it, but anything that I say or do publicly you cannot trust, because I will do and say anything in order to get what I want. And so Maris has to really kind of like live in this very kind of deceptive world. She doesn't know what's true. She doesn't know if Royce is telling her the truth or not. Some of the things he does says in public is very, very hurtful, and almost to the point where even if he is completely lying and she knows behind closed doors that he absolutely likes her, she, you know, she's in the situation where she really, really can't trust him. And this whole time McAllister, the father, is not too happy that Royce and Maris seem to be getting closer, and he's doing everything he can to split them up. And in fact, he tries to get Maris for himself. Now that's all I'm going to say about this, the series. The first book I absolutely found like enthralling. It was a page turner. I couldn't stop reading it, and I felt myself being sucked into this world massively, where I was desperate to read the next book and desperate to read the next book. Now I only rated part 2 and 3 4 stars. I mean, but overall I think it was definitely a 5-star series. I just think the second book had a bit of a lull in it, because if you piece them together as one book, you would have that. You would have, you know, the story that sort of kicks off, then a bit of a lull in the middle before kind of like, you know, the big climax at the end, as it were. So I didn't enjoy the second 2 books as much, but still it was a fantastic series, like I said. And the first book in particular, The Initiation, absolutely had me gripped. It was honestly, it was such a page turner, and if you haven't read them, I would highly recommend if you like a dark romance. But definitely read your trigger warnings before you go into that one. So then the next one I've got is Fall Into You by J.T. Geissinger, and this is book 2 in the Morally Grey series. This is another dark billionaire romance, and we also sort of have a bit of a tortured hero who is Cole, and he is the CFO for McCord Media. It's his family business, and this family is billionaires, and he's also the brother from the hero from book 1. Now essentially what happens in this one is that Cole bumps into Shay, who's our heroine, right at the start of this book. They have a bit of banter in a bar. They end up having a one-night stand together, and then they go their separate ways. And then the following day she starts her new job as a personal assistant, and it turns out that she is going to be the personal assistant to Cole. And so now they're kind of in a workplace situation where she very much works for him. Although they shared a wonderful night together, they had loads of chemistry, and he was really nice to her that evening, he's got a really bad reputation at work. He's extremely grumpy, he's not particularly nice to his staff, and he's very, very demanding. And so everyone warns her and sort of says, you know, you be careful when you go and work for this guy. He won't pull any punches. He'll be extremely demanding, and in fact he goes through personal assistants like wildfire. But she's not cowed by Cole. She's determined to hang on to this job. It's actually a really good job. If she can do it for at least 6 months, that will pretty much guarantee that she can work anywhere, and she really wants a job, so she holds on. Now Cole obviously tries to push her away. He's a bit horrified that this girl that he's really attracted to, spent a night with, is now working for him, and he tries to push her away. And at first he says, you know, there can be nothing between us, particularly while you work for me. Of course that doesn't last too long, but this is like I say, a dark romance. So Cole has sort of an alter ego. You find out a bit more as we go through the book, which also is another reason why he tries to push the heroine away, because he very much believes that he's a bad person, that he doesn't deserve happiness, and he doesn't want to bring her into his life or put her in any kind of danger. Then we have The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. This is one of my new Christmas presents. So my sister bought me this for Christmas. It's one of my favourites, not only from the quarter but for the whole year. So this is book 2 in the Windy City series. It's a sports romance. The main hero in this one, Ryan Shea, is a very famous basketball player, and he is also the twin brother of the heroine from book 1. The heroine in this one is Indy, and she is his sister's best friend, and she needs a place to stay because she's recently fallen out with a long-time boyfriend. She doesn't have anywhere to stay, and so his sister says, look, you've got a spare room, I've just moved out to be with my new fella, and so can Indy move in? And he reluctantly agrees that she can move in. So they become basically roommates in very close proximity together. Now they definitely have chemistry together, but Ryan Shea is celibate and he doesn't have relationships because he wants to absolutely focus on his career. However, they get an opportunity to fake date because the sort of the GM that looks after his team thinks that he's far too focused on basketball, that he doesn't have kind of any rapport or empathy with the rest of the team because he's got a one-track mind. And while that's good in a way, he feels like he needs to definitely, you know, be more of a family man, so that he can kind of like have better relationships basically with the people on the team. And meanwhile, Indy has to go to a friend's wedding where she'll be seeing her ex-boyfriend, and so they kind of come to this arrangement where they will kind of fake date so that she'll pretend to be his girlfriend to help him out with his team, and he will ultimately go to this wedding, one of her friend's weddings, with her and pretend to be the partner. Now, I absolutely love this one. It was a slow burn. I honestly didn't think that I would fall for the hype. So this book has been extremely well hyped. Loads of people absolutely love this one. It's very highly rated, and everyone raved about Ryan Shea. And I personally was thinking, how good can this guy be? I won't fall for him, you know. I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable read, but I'm not going to fall for Ryan Shea. How good can this guy be? Well, let me tell you, he is absolutely delicious and delightful. He is the perfect book boyfriend for sure, and like I say, it ended up being one of my favourites, not just from the quarter but for the whole year. So if you haven't read this, I would highly recommend, and the series so far has been really good. I thoroughly enjoyed book 1, and I'm about to talk about the third book in the series, Caught Up by Liz Tomforde, because that for me was also a 5-star read. Now, it wasn't as good as The Right Move, and Kai, who is the hero in this one, was not as good as Ryan Shea, but still I thoroughly enjoyed the book overall. Of course, it's the next book after The Right Move, so it's book 3 in the Windy City series, and this is another sports romance, but this time the hero in this one is a famous baseball player. He's also a single dad, and this is another kind of nanny situation. So again, Kai needs someone to look after his son during kind of the baseball season, because they go out on the road a lot. He's got special dispensation to bring his child with him because he is a single dad, but he absolutely needs someone to look after the baby basically while he is playing and practicing and out on the road. Again, he's gone through a lot of nannies, so very similar to Heartless. Kai has gone through a lot of nannies, and none of them are good enough to look after his son, and he's seriously considering quitting the sport because he wants to devote his time to being a father. However, his coach absolutely persuades him not to give up baseball, and instead he suggests that his daughter come and be the nanny for him for the summer. So this is where we meet Miller. Now, Miller is a famous chef, but she's taken the summer off to focus on trying to rekindle her love of cooking and come up with some new recipes. So she's got the summer available basically to come and look after Kai's little boy. And so again, this is very, very reluctantly. He doesn't approve of her being the nanny, but he is out of all options, and the coach says, like, you're literally out of options, and basically my daughter Miller will be your nanny for the summer, whether you like it or not. And of course then she's on the road with them, they're in very close proximity together. She develops a very, very strong bond with his son, and of course when he sees that, he starts to fall for her as well. Now, although I rated this one 5 stars and it was very good, like I say, I don't think it was as good as The Right Move. I felt that the book was too long. There was a very laggy bit, I'd say, I don't know, up to about the 60-70% mark. It felt quite laggy in the middle. And I would have only given this 4 stars. However, from around the 70% mark, this book really, really picks up. I didn't stop crying for the last 30% of this book. It's extremely emotional. I loved the third act breakup. I loved kind of how they got back together. I loved how it all ended and it all came together. And like I say, the last 30% absolutely made this book and pushed it to a 5 star for me. But I won't profess to say that this one is perfect, because like I say, it was a little bit laggy in the middle. But once we got to the 70% mark, I couldn't put it down, and like I say, it was very emotional, absolutely made me cry, so would highly recommend. Then the next one that I rated 5 stars in the final quarter of the year was Dom by S.J. Tilley, and this one is book 3 in the Alliance series. It's a mafia romance, and this one is kind of a marriage of convenience, at least for him, and we're following Dom and Val. So I've loved this series overall by S.J. Tilley, and I was really looking forward to this story. Val is the half-sister of King, who's the hero from book 2. They share the same father but have a different mother, and Val has very much had a very different upbringing to King, and has struggled. Her mother was quite verbally abusive towards her, and as a result she lacks quite a lot of confidence, and she also is not sure that she has the affections of her brother or sister, and she really, really struggles to kind of feel like she fits in with the family. Meanwhile, Dom is head of the Chicago Mafia, and he's got some enemies that are after him, and slowly but surely they're picking off his family members, and he absolutely wants to find out who this person is, get revenge, and he believes that he needs the backing of the Alliance. So he decides that he needs to form a relationship with the Alliance, and he thinks the best way to do that is by marrying Val. But instead of going to King and asking for her hand in marriage and trying to join these mafia groups together, Dom doesn't think that King will agree to this. So instead he decides that he is going to seduce Val, not reveal his identity, but kind of seduce her, make her fall in love with him, and then ultimately trick her into getting married. And this is absolutely what happens. I love the courtship part of this, where her and Dom are building this relationship. They kind of meet once, have an amazing sort of chemistry, amazing time together at an airport during a flight. And then after that they kind of have this text message relationship between each other until they get an opportunity to meet up in Las Vegas, which they both jump at the chance. And while they're in Las Vegas, Dom takes steps to make sure that she is drugged, and then basically marries her, so that when she wakes up the next morning she is now married to Dom. The thing is, she is not unhappy about this because she really, really does like Dom, and they agree that they're going to give it a go. But when she then finds out that actually it was all a ruse just so that he could join the Alliance, she is clearly, you know, obviously and clearly heartbroken. And this really knocks her confidence again, because once again she doesn't feel that someone's picked her for her or loves her for her. Instead it's kind of what her brother can do for Dom. And then from there, Don really has to sort of like rebuild her trust, rebuild the relationship, and absolutely get her to believe that he does in fact care about her. Now I love this one because Dom the hero was the type of mafia hero that I absolutely love. He is completely crazy, over the top. He forces some things on the heroine that is completely not acceptable in real life, but I absolutely love to see it in books, and I absolutely gobbled this one up. I was smiling from beginning to end. I thought their relationship was really good. I love their banter between each other. I love their chemistry with each other, and like I say, I love the fact that Dom was really over the top, and by the time we get to the end of this book, he is absolutely head over heels in love with Val and will do anything for her. So I love this one and can't wait for the next one in the series. And then the final one that I rated 5 stars in the final quarter was God of Fury by Rina Kent, and this one is book 5 in the Legacy of the Gods series. And this is a dark college romance between Nikolai and Brandon, so it's an MM romance. And I just absolutely love this one. Rina Kent did a fantastic job. The writing was sensational. The characters are really amazing. The topics and themes of this book were deep, heartfelt, challenging, and yeah, like I've said before when I've talked about this one, I've not 100% come to terms with how I feel about it. I've not fully articulated my thoughts about it, but Rina Kent did such an amazing job at telling their story, tackling some really difficult topics, and making me absolutely fall in love with both of these characters. So I was so rooting for them and was so happy when they got their HEA. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a standalone. I wouldn't recommend you read this unless you've read the others in the series. Because each of the books is kind of like runs in parallel with each other. From a timeline perspective, they kind of all overlap a little bit, and Rina Kent did a fantastic job as well of leaving breadcrumbs throughout the whole series, so that we've started to understand that Nikolai and Brandon are maybe having an affair, that something's going on between them in some of the other books, leaving us clues, and by the time we get to this one, we're really ready to hear their story. And we know that Nikolai has manic episodes. He fights a lot, and he also sleeps in random places, whereas Brandon is the twin brother of Landon, who has previously kind of been an antagonist in some of the other books, and Brandon has always been perceived to be kind of the perfect twin brother, sort of like the more you know, the calm, less manic sort of personality. But what we find out about Brandon is that he is absolutely in turmoil inside. He comes across as very kind of like in control of himself, because he orders his day in such a rigorous way to keep himself in check, so that he doesn't you know, so that he can basically maintain this facade and that people don't find out the truth about what's actually going on with him. But of course, Nikolai pushes all his buttons. Not only does Nikolai get Brandon to confront, you know, what's going on with him, address some trauma that's happened in the past, but helps him to really come to terms with who he is as a person, and to really explore his sexuality, and to feel comfortable in a gay relationship. So I thought, like I say, Rina Kent did a fantastic job here. One of my favourites, not just from the quarter, but for the whole year, and I would highly recommend, and really looking forward to the final book that's coming out later in 2024. So there we go, that's all 8 of my 5-star reads for the final quarter of 2023. I'm shortly going to be recording my favourite books of 2023, so I'll go back and take a look at the whole year, pick out my top 10 from the year as a whole. And I'll also be covering a separate favourite mafia video as well. So the next one that you see that will go up on New Year's Day will be my favourites of 2023 minus any mafia romances that I've read. And then the following Monday it'll be my normal Mafia Romance Monday video, where I'll cover my favourite mafia romances from the year. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in 2024. Bye. Now, it wasn't as good as Ryan Shea. Hero from book 1. Yeah. I really like this. I really like this one. Right. a lot of things that happen that are quite, like I say, dark and that are dark. I've talked about this loads of times before. I know, I've just realised I'm not putting on any lipstick. Have to correct that for the next video. Right, so until finally, who's the lady from book one? What Summer. Yeah, so she's Summer's best friend. I feel like I need to start that again. So